Welcome in. Doing things a little bit differently for this review. If you haven't seen this movie, Warrior, I very much recommend that you go check it out. Come back and watch this if you haven't. This is, in my opinion, the greatest sports movie ever made. The dramatic tension that's created was unbearable for me the first time that I saw it. Immovable object meets unstoppable force. These two things, when they meet, create a hydrogen energy explosion. That's what this movie does, in my opinion. And it takes such an emotional toll on me every time that I watch it. We open on Paddy Conlon leaving an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. He makes his way home listening to an audio cassette, a tape of Moby Dick, which is not a randomly selected book for him to be listening to, his character. The book plays into Paddy's story arc. When he gets home, he finds his long-lost son sitting on his front doorstep, Tommy Conlon. The written dialogue in this scene between the two of them is so revealing about their history without telling you outright. It's all subtextual and it's brilliant writing. Nobody's saying like, you were a drunk, you hurt my feelings. Nobody talks like that. People talk in subtext and they capture the reality of that really flawlessly. Tommy even brings his dad a fifth of vodka, not knowing his dad's been sober for almost 1,000 days. It's weird to him when his dad refuses the vodka. Tommy says, "Did you switch brands?" He has always known his dad to be a drunkard. He's even looking around his dad's apartment going, yeah, there's not really a woman's touch in this apartment, but I guess it's, hard to find a woman who can take a punch nowadays. Which is such a brutal statement, and the dad has no other option but to just take it on the chin. If his son is going to be constantly passive-aggressive and spiteful in his speech, the father is not going to fight back. Because Tommy's verbally boxing him right now, and Paddy can't put up a fight. He's not going to. Paddy offers him coffee. Tommy's like, are you serious? You haven't seen me in 14 years, and you can't even drink with me? It's his dad's response to that tells me he's living in constant regret of his life as a drunk. The man that he was to his wife and kids, he can never be again. So he has to protect himself from alcohol. And Tommy gets really pissed off at that, actually. He evidently has extreme resentment and angst towards his dad. Like, now you stop drinking. You couldn't have stopped before you ruined the family. The end to that scene is Paddy apologizing to Tommy, and Tommy brushing it off, saying, oh yeah, oh, it's good, you're sorry, as he just kind of dozes off. And I think I liked you better when you were drunk. And Paddy just has to sit there and fight back his tears. Nick Nolte's performance right there is always so affecting and heartbreaking to me every time that I watch it. His sadness is subtle, but very profound. We're introduced to Brendan and his family then. Brendan's dad and his brother seem to be the furthest thing from his mind. He's gotten so used to living without him. The movie then switches back and forth from Brendan teaching at high school to Tommy entering into an MMA gym. Then we get a scene in the gym where a professional MMA fighter is wrecking his sparring partners. Like, nobody can stand with this guy. Tommy walks up to the ring, offers to keep the guy warm for a little bit. The owner of the gym dismisses him. He's like, yeah, whatever. We don't need anybody else getting hurt today. But they let him anyway because he signed a waiver. Tommy gets in there and demolishes the guy. Knocks him out cold, and he becomes a clip that goes viral. Meanwhile, Brendan's at the bank being notified that his house is going to be under foreclosure. He and his wife have 3 jobs between the two of them. They are completely upside down on their mortgage. I love that they included that because that represents how much of America, and forget about America, talk about the rest of the world. Few people have the means to do what Brendan does here and to transform a hobby into a source of income or a reliance for income. Brendan signs up for an amateur fighting tournament without his wife knowing, but she can't argue with the amount of money that he brings home after the fight. Tommy and Brendan both individually find out about this UFC MMA tournament coming up. The winner receives a life-changing amount of money. So now the race is on. Tommy hires his dad to be his trainer, which he was once his trainer a long time ago. I love that scene because Paddy gets so excited. His son is semi-opening up to him and allowing him in. But Tommy tries to shut that down, like, immediately. He doesn't want small talk. He doesn't want an interpersonal relationship. This is business. Trainer, trainee. Patty sees this as an opportunity to right some of his wrongs, or at least make an attempt. He even demands the pain pills that Tommy's taken recreationally. He's like, you sounded like a freaking maraca coming through the doors there. Hand him over. So Tommy begrudgingly does. Patty sets the standard for his diet, sleep regimen, and training schedule. Basically removing any self-sabotaging habits that Tommy has. He's removing those in order to make him get serious about this tournament. He's like, dude, we're going to make something out of you. The reasons behind each of them entering into the tournament is where the high emotion comes into play. So this movie pulls feelings out of me in a way that no other sport movie ever has. Maybe, okay, alright. That might be a lie. Even ones that aren't sports related movies, like dramas, this movie gives them a run for their money. Tommy Conlon lost a best friend in the military, so the $5 million that he could win is going to go to his best friend's widow and her newborn. If Tommy wanted the money for himself, the stakes would not carry as much weight as they do. But because he wants to give it to the widow of his best friend, it's so much more powerful, and it's very wise on the writer's part to include that. Brendan is going to set up his family with the $5 million. He'd make it so his wife never has to work again, and they can keep the house or, buy another one. So that carries a lot of weight too. I want them both to win equally, but only one can win. That is such an effective way to build a drama. Brendan is also the talk of the town in his high school, and the principal even finds out. He's like, my office. And the principal scolds him because they just can't have a teacher moonlighting as a fighter. The superintendent comes in to speak to Brendan and suspends him without pay, heightening his need to enter into this tournament. Now that Tommy's fight clip has gone viral, the people in the military are among the millions of people who have seen it. But this small scene is very important for us to see because Tommy recently left the military illegally. He deserted his unit, but as he was doing so, he came across some soldiers who were in need, and he helped them. He saved their life. Once he did that, then he fled. One of the dudes he saved sees the fight video, and makes the connection that that's the dude that saved my life. This is bad for Tommy because he's been found out, and now he's probably going to be arrested by the military. Then Brendan convinces an old friend of his to be his trainer. This guy owns a gym, Frank Campana, played by Frank Grillo, who as a person has been involved with the UFC and MMA for decades now. I don't think he ever fought professionally, but regardless, he's a fighter and an actor, so naturally they would cast him in this movie. He's also in 3 of the Marvel movies and a couple of the Purge movies too. Patty goes to visit his son Brendan, and this is the first time that they're seeing each other in over 3 years. But Brendan's completely dismissive of him, wants nothing to do with him. Probably for good reason, but his heart is so hardened to his father. It's a scene with A+ writing, acting, and staging. The only silver lining out of the whole conversation is that Patty tells Brendan that Tommy's back in town, a brother who he hasn't seen in nearly 2 decades. This pulls at his heartstrings, and his whole demeanor changes at the mention of Tommy's name. There's even a little bit of reconciliation between them two as father and son there, only if it's an inch. I believe that they moved the dial in that scene. Then the training montage happens, and the last half of the movie is fighting, pretty much. 16 different fights occur. We're not even shown all of them, because obviously Tommy's and Brendan's fights are the focus. Tommy is a brute force. His fights are over in seconds. Brendan is all endurance. He can take a serious beating and stand back up. Someone who breaks people and someone who cannot be broken. How is that not riveting? It's a tank fighting a boulder that can throw itself at the tank. Tommy and Brendan first see each other at the hotel, make eye contact from across the room, and that's it initially. Their faces say more than a monologue ever could. It's a profound moment and treated as such by the director. I love that. They end up meeting on the beach by the hotel later that night, and it's a pretty rough talk between the two of them. This is the first time that they're addressing any of this in 14 years. The scene ends with Tommy getting up super close and personal to his brother and saying, "Are we done?" Brendan goes. So yeah, they're done talking. and Tommy's courage to do that with his hands in his pockets, just doing that. In between the fights, there in the tournament, there are scenes they cut back to the audience watching at home, and we actually get some dramatic scenes to counteract some of the action going on. Like when Tommy's playing slots and his dad comes up and just sparks up conversation. It goes so poorly for the both of them. Tommy says some words to his dad that cut him to the core, and they're so brutal that his dad actually breaks his sobriety, his 1,000 days sober, and he gets smashed drunk. It's so well done to have Patty listening to the Moby Dick tape while he's drunk. He ends up screaming in Tommy's face, but he's screaming at Ahab, Captain Ahab. And really, he's screaming at himself. He's screaming at himself for past mistakes, shouting at Ahab by shouting at his son. Okay, sports movies are never that layered. Why'd they go so hard with this one, Patty's even trashed his hotel room, and Tommy has to clean up after him, and he just has to sit there and actually hold his dad while he drunkenly falls asleep. It resembles a soldier taking care of another soldier, like in or after a battle. I think he feels awful for causing him to break his sobriety with his poisonous words and the damage he just caused his dad. And actually, Patty is no longer in Tommy's corner for the last fight. They can work out their differences once and for all in the ring. The soundtrack playing during each fight is slow and dramatic. This is a drama at its heart about reconciliation and forgiveness, addiction and coping mechanisms, financial issues. During the last fight, Brendan does some grappling, and Tommy is not used to grappling. That's not the type of fighter he is. He's going to take you down with his fists. He's not going to grapple with you. Brendan is the unbreakable one here, though. So Tommy is breakable, and he breaks. Brendan snaps his shoulder. It renders his arm useless. But he keeps fighting, even though Brendan is pleading with him to stop. He's pleading with his brother, put your pride aside, lose this fight with some sort of dignity so they can maybe start a new chapter, even though his brother is probably going to be arrested. And Brendan's going to be a very rich man. I like to think that he will let Tommy in on some of the money, and maybe Patty, but I don't know. I don't see much hope there for Brendan and Patty, except for some brief eye contact right before Brendan officially wins the match and beats Tommy. It's eye contact with his dad and a brief head nod and a head nod. Like a, do what you gotta do, giving him permission. I do see hope for Tommy and Brendan, though, which is a good thing and a long time coming. They're still youthful and have plenty of time to mend fences and have some sort of a relationship now, onward. And the movie ends there. These actors really learned how to fight. Tom Hardy just won a jiu-jitsu tournament, I think it was last year, and he won. He's in his mid-40s now, and it started because he made this movie. He's probably always had a proclivity or an inclination to fight movies. He might be a big fan of fight movies, that's why he wanted to do this. So he put his heart and soul into this movie. Joel Edgerton tore his MCL and halted production for like 6 weeks. Tom Hardy broke a toe, some ribs, and a finger during this. So they knew they had to make it as realistic as possible, toe that line, which seems so hard for other UFC MMA fight movies to do. I've never seen a UFC movie achieve this level of quality and drama. It's really good storytelling. People call it melodramatic on Letterboxd, but I completely disagree. It's got real heart, real emotion, and real relational angst. So, that's my review of this movie. Thank you very much for being here. Catch you next week. Peace.